Life is unpredictable. Sometimes, the people we trust the most betray us, and we're forced to confront our deepest fears and challenges. But what happens when a man, broken by betrayal, finds the strength to rise up, reclaim his life, and rebuild everything from the ground up? Today, we dive into the incredible journey of Mark, a man who faced unimaginable heartbreak and loss, only to emerge stronger than ever. From the devastation of discovering a loved one's betrayal, to the long and painful road of healing, Mark's story will inspire you to never give up, no matter how dark the path may seem. Grab a seat, because this is a story of resilience, redemption, and the power of second chances. Let's begin. Mark Harris had always thought of himself as a hardworking man. A man who put his family first, who worked tirelessly as a contractor, and who believed his wife, Emily, and their son, Noah, were the center of his world. But after another long day at work, Mark came home to a scene that shattered everything he thought he knew. He opened the front door, greeted by the usual scent of freshly cooked dinner. But there was something off in the air. As he walked into the living room, Mark noticed a small, folded letter on the coffee table. His heart sank when he saw his wife's name on it. The letter revealed the unimaginable. Emily had been having an affair with his best friend, Jake, a fellow contractor, for over a year. And now, she was planning to leave him. Worse yet, she intended to take Noah, their 10-year-old son, with her. Mark's world crumbled as the words on the paper sank in. Stunned, Mark confronted Emily, but she didn't deny it. Her face was filled with guilt, but her decision was final. She was leaving, and she had already packed her things. Mark felt a sharp pain in his chest, like everything he had worked for had been ripped away in an instant. Mark spent the following days in a daze. The pain of betrayal hit him harder than he ever could have imagined. It wasn't just about the affair, it was the betrayal of his trust, his friendship with Jake, and the belief that their family was solid. To make matters worse, Mark discovered that Emily had emptied their joint bank account, taking a significant amount of money. His finances were now in jeopardy, and his work began to slip as he could no longer focus on his contracts. The emotional toll was overwhelming, and for the first time in his life, he felt completely out of control. The one thing Mark could hold on to was Noah. His son had been his greatest joy, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing him. He knew he needed to do something, but he had no idea where to begin. With the support of his colleagues and his brother, Tom, Mark started to gather his strength. He knew that to protect his son, he would need more than just emotional support, he needed to take legal action. After consulting with a lawyer named Rachel, Mark learned that he could fight for custody of Noah and challenge Emily's decision to take him away. Rachel advised Mark to hire a private investigator to gather evidence of the affair, which could be used in court. Reluctantly, Mark agreed, knowing it was the only way to secure his son's future. Over the next few weeks, Mark learned things he didn't want to know. He discovered that Jake, who had been a close friend, was not just Emily's lover but had been financially exploiting her during their relationship. Armed with this new information, Mark began preparing for the battle ahead. It wasn't going to be easy, he would be up against a well-connected and wealthy family, but he couldn't give up. Not when it came to Noah. The custody battle was fierce, and Mark found himself in and out of courtrooms for weeks. Emily fought hard, accusing Mark of being an absent father and trying to paint him as a neglectful parent. But Mark wasn't going to let her win. His lawyer, Rachel, had gathered the evidence of the affair and Jake's misconduct, which would be presented in court. As the case continued, Mark found support from his friends, neighbors, and even some of Emily's family members, who were shocked by her actions. The community rallied behind him, providing him with the emotional and moral strength he needed to press on. It all came to a head during the final hearing, when Mark was able to expose Jake's financial manipulation and Emily's reckless behavior. The judge, moved by the overwhelming evidence and testimony, granted Mark full custody of Noah. The relief Mark felt when he heard those words was indescribable. His son was coming home. In the aftermath of the court ruling, Emily's life began to unravel. Jake was fired from his job as a contractor, facing legal consequences for his actions with Emily. She, too, faced financial and social consequences, as her friends and family distanced themselves from her. Emily eventually admitted to herself that her relationship with Jake was toxic and destructive. She left him, realizing that it had been a mistake from the beginning. But by then, it was too late. Mark had won the battle for his son, and Emily's relationship with Noah was forever strained. With the court case behind him, Mark began to focus on rebuilding his life. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but he knew he had to be strong, for Noah. They moved to a new city, starting fresh. Mark received an offer for a promotion at work, giving him more financial stability and the ability to give Noah a better life. It wasn't an easy transition, but Mark remained determined. The road ahead would be full of challenges, but with Noah by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. Together, they built a new life filled with hope and resilience. Months after the move, Sarah reached out to Mark. She expressed regret over what had happened and asked if they could talk. She had been seeing a therapist, and after everything that had unfolded, she wanted to try and rebuild a relationship with Noah. Mark was torn. He hadn't forgotten the hurt, but he also understood that Noah deserved to know his mother. After much thought, Mark agreed to let Sarah meet with Noah, on the condition that it would be done slowly and carefully. The reunion was emotional. Noah was hesitant at first, but Sarah was patient, and over time, she started to rebuild a relationship with him, on his terms. Mark was cautiously optimistic, knowing that trust would take time to repair, but hopeful that, in time, Noah would have a better understanding of who his mother was and what had happened. Mark's journey wasn't over. He had fought for his family and won, but the road to healing and moving forward was just beginning. The story of Mark, Emily, Noah, and the choices they made would continue to unfold in the years to come. But for now, Mark had peace. He knew that, no matter what, his love for Noah would always be the foundation of his life. They had endured the storm together, and as father and son, they would continue to walk toward a brighter future. As Mark adjusted to his new life with Noah, he began to realize that the road ahead wasn't just about healing from the past. It was about making sure they both had a better future. Mark enrolled Noah in a new school, one that was more in line with his interests. They also started exploring outdoor activities together, like hiking and fishing, things that had always been close to Mark's heart. Through these simple moments, they built a new routine. Noah started to open up more, sharing his thoughts and feelings about the divorce, about his mom, and about the uncertainty he had felt in the past year. Mark listened carefully, always ready to offer support, but also ensuring that Noah felt safe to express his emotions. Their bond grew stronger. Each day felt like a new step toward normalcy, toward something better. Mark knew the pain of the past would never fully disappear, but it didn't define them anymore. What mattered now was the present, the moments they shared, the memories they created, and the hope that they were building together. Meanwhile, Sarah's life continued to spiral. Her attempt to reconnect with Noah was proving to be more difficult than she had anticipated. The wounds she had caused in her betrayal and her actions weighed heavily on her, and despite her attempts to rebuild her life, she often found herself lonely and regretful. Her relationship with Jake had fallen apart quickly after the court ruling, and the reality of her actions had become hard to ignore. Sarah sought therapy, hoping to find some sense of redemption or peace. She understood that the damage she had done was severe, but a part of her still hoped to rebuild a relationship with Noah. The therapist advised her to take things slowly and to focus on understanding Noah's emotions first, rather than pushing for anything too soon. She agreed, but deep down, she was terrified of losing her son forever. She knew it wasn't just about being a mother, it was about earning back trust. And that, Sarah realized, would take time. One rainy afternoon, months after the court case had ended, Sarah came to Mark's door. She had requested a meeting, and Mark, unsure of what to expect, agreed. When she arrived, she had a calm, vulnerable look in her eyes. She wasn't the same woman who had once betrayed him. The guilt was evident, but so was the sincerity in her voice. "I know I can't erase the past," Sarah began, her voice trembling, "but I want to try again with Noah. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I want him to know that I'm here for him, no matter what." Mark studied her carefully, weighing his options. He hadn't fully healed, and the wounds were still raw, but he also knew that Noah needed a chance to make his own decisions. He didn't want to stand in the way of his son's future, but he had to protect him too. "I'm willing to consider it," Mark said carefully, his eyes locking onto Sarah's. "But it's on Noah's terms. I won't force him to accept you, and I won't let him get hurt again." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of Mark's words. "I know. I want him to know I'm here." Mark agreed to let Sarah visit Noah in a neutral setting, a park near their new home. It wasn't easy for either of them, but they both knew that this was the first step in healing, for Noah's sake, and for their own. Noah was hesitant when he met with Sarah for the first time since the split. It had been a long time, and he wasn't sure how to feel. But Sarah was patient. She didn't push. She simply let Noah take the lead, talking about his favorite things, his fears, and what he had been going through. Mark, watching from a distance, felt a pang of worry. He had always protected Noah, but he knew that healing meant letting go, letting Noah form his own path forward. After an hour, Noah stood up and looked at Sarah. He didn't smile, but his expression softened. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," Noah said quietly. "But I want to get to know you again." Mark's heart swelled with a mix of relief and sadness. It wasn't a perfect reunion, but it was a start. Noah wasn't ready to let go of the hurt, but he was open to the possibility of rebuilding that relationship. For now, that was enough. As time passed, Noah continued to meet Sarah occasionally, always with Mark's guidance. The bond they were forming wasn't fast, but it was real. Sarah proved to be patient, understanding that Noah needed space. And as she worked on herself, Sarah began to understand the gravity of her actions. She also began to feel a sense of redemption, knowing that her son was willing to take small steps toward reconnecting. Mark, for his part, remained focused on his role as Noah's father. His life was far from perfect, but it was filled with purpose. The house he had once shared with Emily felt like a distant memory now, a chapter that had closed for good. He and Noah had their own space, their own routines, and a new sense of peace that they hadn't had before. Mark's career also flourished after the promotion he received, bringing with it financial stability and the ability to provide Noah with more opportunities. They traveled together, explored new places, and, most importantly, grew together as father and son. Years later, as Noah grew older, their relationship continued to evolve. He graduated high school and, with his father's encouragement, decided to pursue a degree in environmental science, something that had always fascinated him. Mark, once again, was there to support him, attending his graduation and feeling immense pride. Sarah, though still working through her own struggles, had grown into a better person. She didn't force herself into Noah's life, but from time to time, they spoke on the phone. She had finally found peace within herself and accepted that the road to reconciliation with her son would be long, but that was okay. The story of Mark, Noah, and Sarah wasn't a perfect one. It was messy, it was painful, and at times it seemed like there was no hope. But as Mark watched his son walk toward his future, he knew that they had overcome the impossible. They had found healing and hope in each other. As the years passed, Mark reflected on everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the legal battles, and the long road to healing. But the most important lesson he learned was that life was about more than the struggles that defined the past. It was about the choices you made, the relationships you built, and the resilience you cultivated to keep moving forward. Mark began to share his story with others. He spoke at local community events, offering support to single parents and those going through difficult separations. His story of fighting for his son and rebuilding his life resonated with many, inspiring people who were facing their own battles. The more he shared, the more he realized that he wasn't alone. There were many parents who had gone through similar struggles, and together, they could offer one another hope and understanding. It became clear to him that while betrayal might feel like the end, it was also the beginning of something new, a new chapter that could lead to growth, understanding, and love. As Noah entered adulthood, Mark watched his son evolve into a young man who was strong, compassionate, and determined. Noah was applying for internships in environmental sciences, driven by his passion for conservation. Mark couldn't have been prouder. Watching his son achieve his dreams brought a sense of fulfillment to Mark's life that he hadn't even known he needed. Despite their challenges, Noah had learned from his father. He saw Mark's resilience, his determination to protect their family, and his ability to find peace despite the chaos. Mark had been his constant, a source of strength that allowed Noah to flourish. One afternoon, after a particularly long discussion about Noah's future plans, Mark couldn't help but ask, "How do you feel about everything that's happened, Noah? I know it wasn't easy, especially with Sarah coming back into your life." Noah thought for a moment before responding. "I think about it a lot, Dad. But I've realized that it's not about holding on to the past. It's about who we are now. We've both learned so much, and I'm thankful for everything you've done for me." Mark felt a wave of emotion wash over him. It wasn't just a father's pride, it was the deep satisfaction of knowing that despite all the pain, they had come out stronger. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her own personal journey of redemption. She had made amends with her own mistakes, and although she and Noah were still distant, she found solace in the fact that they were slowly rebuilding trust. Sarah moved back to the city, closer to Noah, and began volunteering at a local shelter, helping people in need. She wasn't trying to force herself into Noah's life, but she worked on herself, knowing that time and patience would be the key. She often called Mark to check in, not to reconcile with him, but to talk about how Noah was doing. Mark didn't always have the answers, but their conversations became less strained over time. One day, Sarah reached out to Mark, asking if they could meet to talk. Mark was hesitant, but after some thought, he agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, where Sarah told Mark about the progress she had made in therapy and her efforts to rebuild her life. "I'm not asking for anything, Mark," Sarah said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. I don't expect Noah to forgive me, but I hope he knows that I'm here when he's ready." Mark nodded, not knowing what to say. He had come a long way from the man who had been shattered by betrayal. He had healed, but that didn't mean he could easily forgive. However, he appreciated Sarah's honesty. "It's going to take time, Sarah," Mark said gently. "But we'll see. Noah will make his own choices." They both agreed to take things one step at a time. Years passed, and Mark continued to thrive. He had climbed the ladder at work, enjoying professional success, but more importantly, he had a deeper sense of peace than he had ever imagined possible. His relationship with Noah was rock solid, and they had formed an unbreakable bond built on trust, love, and respect. One morning, Noah sat down with Mark and told him about an opportunity to travel abroad for his environmental studies. He had been accepted into a prestigious program in Europe, and he was excited about the adventure, but there was one thing on his mind: would Mark be okay with it? "Dad, I want to take this step, but I don't want you to feel alone. I know how hard things have been for you. I don't want you to feel like I'm abandoning you." Mark smiled warmly. "Noah, you have to take this opportunity. I've raised you to be strong and independent, and I'm proud of everything you're becoming. I'll be just fine." And with that, Noah left for his adventure, confident that no matter where life took him, he had a family that loved him unconditionally. As Noah continued his studies abroad, Mark found himself with more time on his hands. At first, the quiet of the house felt empty without Noah's laughter or the sound of his footsteps. But over time, Mark began to rediscover old passions. He started volunteering at local shelters, helping those in need. The satisfaction of contributing to his community gave him a sense of fulfillment he hadn't realized he had been missing. Mark's volunteer work soon led him to a group of fathers who had also gone through divorces and struggled with parenting after separation. They shared their stories, supported each other, and even started organizing events to raise awareness about the challenges single parents face. Mark's experience became an invaluable resource for others in the group, and they all found strength in each other's stories. One evening, after a particularly inspiring meeting with the group, Mark reflected on how far he had come. He remembered the man he had once been, the one who couldn't imagine life without Sarah, the one who had been consumed by anger and heartbreak. That man no longer existed. He had found strength in himself, in his son, and in the people he had met along the way. But most importantly, Mark realized that he was still open to new possibilities. He wasn't ready to close the door to new relationships, new experiences, and the chance for deeper connections with the people around him. Meanwhile, Sarah had continued her journey of self-improvement. Though her relationship with Noah remained distant, she made a conscious effort to rebuild herself. She had started a new job in a non-profit organization focused on helping single mothers, a cause that was dear to her heart. It gave her a sense of purpose and direction. Over the years, Sarah's growth was visible. She had become more self-aware and was no longer the same woman who had made reckless decisions in the past. She had started attending support groups for parents who struggled with divorce and had gained insight into her own actions. Sarah often reflected on her relationship with Mark and how things had fallen apart. But instead of harboring regret, she began to focus on how she could make amends with Noah, even if that meant taking things slowly. One afternoon, Sarah wrote Noah a letter. She poured her heart into the words, acknowledging her mistakes and expressing her genuine desire to be a part of his life, even if it took time. She didn't send the letter right away, though. She wanted to give Noah space to come to his own conclusions. The letter sat on her desk for weeks, untouched, as Sarah tried to stay patient and allow life to unfold. She knew that her mistakes couldn't be undone in an instant, but she hoped one day Noah might see her efforts and allow a bridge to be built. As the years went on, Noah's career took off. He graduated with honors and secured a research position in a conservation organization in a remote part of the world. His passion for the environment, which had been sparked so many years ago, was now his life's work. Despite his success, he knew that part of his journey was still missing, healing his relationship with Sarah. One day, after a long day of work in the field, Noah sat down on a bench overlooking a peaceful lake. He pulled out the letter from Sarah, the one that had been sitting on his desk for months, and read it again. This time, it felt different. He understood the depth of her regret, and while he wasn't ready to forgive her completely, something inside him shifted. Maybe it was time to let go of the anger. Maybe it was time to start rebuilding. He decided to call Sarah. "Mom," Noah said softly, "I've read your letter. And I need to say that I don't know where we'll go from here, but I want to start trying. I can't promise anything, but I'm willing to work on it." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she heard the words she had been waiting for. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a sign of hope, of healing. Sarah, too, was ready to take the first step toward mending their bond. In the years that followed, the story of Mark, Noah, and Sarah came full circle. Mark had been through the worst of it, but he had found peace, purpose, and meaning in his life again. His work with the community helped him stay grounded, and his relationship with Noah continued to flourish. Noah's relationship with Sarah was still a work in progress. They took small steps toward rebuilding trust, learning to communicate openly and without judgment. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for Sarah and Noah, that was enough. Mark's life, too, began to expand in unexpected ways. One evening, he met someone new at a community event, a woman named Rachel who was a fellow volunteer. Rachel shared many of Mark's passions, and they quickly became friends. Over time, their friendship grew into something more. Mark was cautious, aware of the pain he had endured in the past, but he also realized that it was time to open his heart again. Mark, Noah, and Sarah had all come a long way. They were no longer the people they once were, but they had learned, grown, and healed in their own ways. Mark and Noah were thriving, and while Sarah still had work to do, she knew that the possibility of mending her relationship with her son was no longer just a distant dream. Together, they had created a new chapter. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of hope, growth, and the understanding that life would continue to challenge them in new ways. But this time, they would face those challenges together, stronger than before. Time continued its march forward. Years passed, and the lives of Mark, Noah, and Sarah intertwined in ways they hadn't anticipated, but perhaps, in hindsight, they were meant to. Noah, after completing his studies and securing his position in the environmental field, returned home to visit Mark. The distance between them had grown over the years, but there was always a bond that remained. As father and son sat together, they reflected on the time that had passed, each one of them marking a significant change in their lives. "I didn't think I would ever get to this point," Mark said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "To think of all the things that went wrong, the heartbreak, and yet, here we are. You've grown into someone I'm incredibly proud of." Noah smiled, his eyes bright with the wisdom that had grown alongside him. "It wasn't easy, Dad. But everything you did, how you fought for me and held things together, it made me stronger. Even when it was tough for you." Mark chuckled softly. "I didn't know if I was doing it right at times. But it worked out." Noah leaned back, looking out the window, the sun casting a golden hue over the horizon. "You did more than just work out, Dad. You gave me a life. You gave me a foundation that I've built on, and I'm still learning from it every day." Their conversation was a quiet but powerful moment of acknowledgement, two lives that had faced adversity and overcome it. It was a chapter closed, but it felt like there were more pages yet to turn. As Mark and Noah spent more time together, something unexpected happened. They attended a local charity event to support single-parent families, an organization Mark had volunteered with for years. The event brought people from different walks of life, but one person caught Mark's attention. Rachel, the woman he had met years earlier through his volunteer work, was there. She had become a close friend, someone who had shared Mark's passion for helping others. And, over the past few months, their relationship had blossomed into something deeper. Mark never thought he would be ready to love again, especially after everything he had been through, but Rachel brought out a side of him he thought he'd lost, a side that still believed in connection, in starting anew. They shared a quiet moment together during the event, looking out over the crowd, their hands brushing as they exchanged glances. "You've come a long way, Mark," Rachel said softly, her voice full of warmth. "I have," he admitted. "And I have you to thank for being part of that journey." Rachel smiled. "We're both here, making a difference. And we have each other's back, no matter what comes next." Meanwhile, Sarah had spent the past few years focusing on herself and her relationship with Noah. Their bond had strengthened over time, slowly but steadily. She didn't expect forgiveness overnight, but the small steps forward felt like victories to her. She had seen her own flaws and had done the difficult work to change, not just for herself but for her son. One evening, Sarah and Noah sat in her apartment, looking through old photos. It was a peaceful moment, one that was marked by quiet understanding. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "For everything I put you through." Noah turned to face her, his expression softer now. "You don't have to apologize anymore, Mom. We've both been through a lot. But I can see you've changed. I can see that you want to be part of my life again." Sarah wiped away a tear. "I've been trying, Noah. I'll always try, if you'll let me." Noah reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I know. And that's all I've ever wanted. Years passed, and Mark, Noah, and Sarah found themselves in a new rhythm. Mark's relationship with Rachel deepened, and Noah continued to excel in his career. They supported each other through life's challenges, each person understanding the importance of forgiveness, healing, and growth. On a sunny afternoon, the family gathered at a local park for a picnic. Mark, Noah, Sarah, and Rachel were all there, sharing laughs and enjoying each other's company. It wasn't a perfect family, but it was a family nonetheless. There were still moments of awkwardness, some unspoken emotions, but the air was filled with something new, understanding and hope. As they sat together, Rachel leaned over to Mark. "I never imagined I'd be part of this story, but I'm so glad I am." Mark smiled, his heart full. "Me too. Sometimes life works out in ways you don't expect." Mark stood on the edge of the park, looking out over the landscape. The years had changed him, shaped him into someone who could look back without bitterness. He had found peace, not just within himself but in his relationship with Noah, and even with Sarah. "I've learned a lot," Mark thought to himself. That love and forgiveness can rebuild even the most broken parts. That starting over doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning to build something new from the pieces. Noah walked up to him, standing silently beside him for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Dad." Mark looked at his son, his heart full of gratitude. "You've made me proud too, son. And you always will." Together, they stood in silence, watching the world go on, knowing that whatever came next, they were ready. Mark's journey was one of loss, growth, and resilience. He had faced unimaginable heartache, only to rise stronger, more determined to protect and cherish the family he had left. Through the struggles, he had learned the importance of forgiveness, of himself, of Sarah, and of life's difficult circumstances. He had rebuilt his life, and it was better than he could have ever imagined. The story wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was a reminder that even when everything seems lost, there's always a way to rebuild, to find healing, and to embrace the future with open arms. Thank you so much for watching Mark's story. Life is filled with unexpected turns, and sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most rewarding victories. What has been your journey of healing and growth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring new story. Remember, it's never too late to start over and make something beautiful from the pieces of your past. See you in the next video.